7 years ago, dangerous thingies. I have a speech to make because I am the president of podcasting. My name is Chip Chantry, and with me is my vice president, James Q. Heskey. James, how are you?
Oh, that's good. And the Q stands for Q drop. We are dropping information about the pedophiles who are in podcasting, which is actually, that's a real thing. That's they actually are out there, and that's just the news. They're just just wait for it, and we'll just find out about it. I am doing all right. You know what? We are moving forward with the summer. We're getting out there. I'm back from vacation. I have one job now instead of two. I feel fantastic. I feel free. We're recording on a Tuesday in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. I'm shit-faced.
Yeah.
That's okay. I have to go back to work in like 3 hours, but yeah.
He's been verbally abusive to me ever since we started this Zoom meeting.
We call it Reaganing. Speaking
of Reaganing, today's theme is presidents. We're getting presidential this week. I think we talk about I love presidential trivia because I feel like it's a finite amount, but there's still enough of it out there that's fun and interesting. Like, you can always find that one. It's like Pink Floyd albums. You can always find that one that you haven't really listened to yet and get into it. Like, ooh, James Monroe. Let me learn about him for a little. So it's a fun. I can go back to that deep cut.
Right, so, right. It's It's and they all did opium.
It's
just like Pink Floyd.
Right. So, James, I did some research on a president. Mm-hmm. You did research on a president. I think we also did some quick hits.
Mine's just about Trump, by the way. We're just doing Trump. Great. We're also recording this during the January 6th hearing is going on right now, so we're recording this instead of listening to that. So, so we're basically we are the Liz Cheneys of podcasting.
We just listened to the back catalog of presidents.
Yes. I think that's basically it. We're the B-sides.
Right. James, do you want to start us off with a fun presidential fact?
I would love to. I would absolutely love to. Did you know that nobody was allowed to dance in the White House during President James Polk's tenure because he was a strict Presbyterian, which is a type of religious hospital, I believe. And then when Zachary Taylor took over in 1849, he immediately danced to Kenny Loggins' Footloose.
It's very appropriate. Very appropriate.
And a true fact, at least some of that.
Yeah, most of it, I would say.
Yes. Do you have one?
I do. Here's a fun one. Abe Lincoln, of course. Honest
Who?
Abe.
Was he a president?
He was.
Okay.
Stretch Lincoln, as they called him.
Agree to disagree on him being a president, but go on.
He was our tallest president at 6'4". Mm-hmm. He apparently, there's thinking that he probably suffered from something called Marfan syndrome, which is a genetic disorder that causes people to be very tall, thin, and long-limbed. Now, Marfan syndrome is also known to cause the back of people's heads to explode.
Wow. We really owe John Wilkes Booth an apology.
Yeah, we really do.
Did you know 3 different presidents have won Grammys?
Really?
Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Jimmy Carter all won for the audio versions of their autobiographies. And Nixon won, actually, but he had to give it back in 1990 for being part of Milli Vanilli.
Blame it on Agnew. Okay.
Do you have another fact?
I do. Let's do this one. Lyndon Baines Johnson. His career started in the state of Texas. He was a teacher. That's how he started out. Lyndon B. Johnson was just a teacher. Wow. He was known for being strict but fair and teaching the kids their spelling lessons through the bathroom stall as he shit. Because that's what he used to do with his like cabinet aides and stuff like. Did you know that?
I did not. I just thought it was a fun
apparently
fact.
Johnson would like hold like meetings, like he would go into the men's room and basically make his staff like stand outside while he was in the stall.
Reagan also would shit during cabinet meetings, but he would not go into the bathroom.
Yeah, he would
just soil himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got another one?
Yeah. Chip, you're fluent in Japanese, right?
C.
So you obviously know the term bushusuru.
Sure.
Which means to do a bush. As in to do a George H.W. Bush. As in that time George H.W. Bush threw up all over a Japanese prime minister during a state dinner. It is now just a saying that they have in Japan. It's just a nice little thing, a gift that we gave to them. George H.W. Bush was on a 12-day tour throughout Asia. He stopped in Japan, had a state dinner with the prime minister, and proceeded to violently throw up all over him. It was the worst thing to happen to a Japanese prime minister until about a week ago.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
You got anything?
Yeah. Here's a nice one. This is a nice one. In the year 1914, in a proclamation, President Woodrow Wilson officially established the second Sunday in May as Mother's Day. It was a day for all mothers, to which Wilson followed up with, white mothers. Because he was super racist.
Yeah, he was. George W. Bush and Hugh Hefner are distant cousins. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. And they've also both been coked out of their minds and gotten sucked off by Nancy Reagan. That's another one. That's another thing they have in common.
They really do.
Yeah.
Good for them.
And they lived in houses other people owned. So, I guess.
Right. So it all comes together.
Yeah.
James, you want to go all the way back?
I do.
Let's go all the way back. George Washington, besides being the father of our nation, was also I didn't know this. He was an enthusiastic dog breeder. Mm-hmm. He bred dogs.
Sure.
Particularly, he loved his hunting hounds, to which he gave names like Sweet Lips and Drunkard. By the way, Sweet Lips and Drunkard are also some of the names that Donald Trump has given to some of his female staffers.
Dad, I'm Eric. I have a dog one, too. John Adams actually named one of his dogs Satan, which I think is insane because Joe Biden should have just used that excuse for that one that kept biting everybody.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this one is it's possessed by Satan. No,
Yeah.
not that Satan. Like the dog, the dog
Satan.
of Satan
Yeah.
possessed him. Do you actually know where the name the White House comes from?
No.
It's from Teddy Roosevelt. Good old TR named it.
Oh, wow. So it wasn't called the White House for like 100 years.
Right. So 1901, Teddy Roosevelt named it the White House. Before that, it was called the Executive Mansion or the President's Palace. And before that, it was called Old Mr. Washington's Place, and kids would dare each other to spend a night.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
James, I got one more.
Okay. Yeah, me too.
I think this one is just riveting. Abe Lincoln, going back to heads exploding. Abe Lincoln invited Ulysses Grant, who would become president in another 4 or 5 years. Lincoln invited Grant to the Ford Theater that night to see the play, the night that he got shot. Grant was supposed to be in the box with Lincoln, and actually apparently really had remorse for years because he was like, I probably could have stopped the attack.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, Mark Wahlberg said the same thing. But here's the reason why Grant didn't go. He declined because his wife apparently made plans to go see their kids in New Jersey that night.
Oh, yeah.
Which is the biggest just bullshit excuse ever. Like, just tell them I don't want to go see that place. Just tell them we're going to see our kids in Jersey. Like, do you know how many times Kim and I have gotten out of stuff because we have to walk the dog? Like, the amount of times I probably almost didn't get shot in the head because I lied about Franklin.
I spaced for a minute because I was trying to think of a joke, and I didn't know if you were talking about Ulysses S. Grant or Mark Wahlberg. Oh no, I couldn't stop 9/11 because I had to go to New Jersey that night.
Yeah. No, that's I'm sure Wahlberg's used that one to get out of like a Wahlburgers grand opening or something.
Gotta go to Jersey, man.
Yeah.
Gotta save Lincoln. Yeah, I got one quick one. John Quincy Adams signed off on an expedition to the center of the earth because John Quincy Adams was a hollow earther.
No.
Yeah. Nowadays, we know this is dumb. If you want to waste your money on a large government project, you do not send it to the center of the earth. You send it to the Pentagon. That is where you send your money to be set on fire. There are jets. You put it up in the sky, or it's a military base. There's certainly a war you could start or something like that. So those are some fun presidential facts. Are you, do you think we should maybe talk about some presidents?
Yeah, let's inaugurate this podcast episode.
Let's do it. And I'm excited because I think what we've learned is that we're definitely just going to get another Biden versus Trump election, and it's going to go well, and everybody's going to be happy.
Go great.
Great. Here we go. Here it comes. Chip, I'm going to make the argument here that Benjamin Harrison was the perfect president.
Ooh, I'm excited. Don't know much about him.
Yeah, I didn't either. He was a war hero.
With our last couple, I think he's probably got a good shot.
Yeah. He was a war hero. He was a senator. He was the grandson of a former president. He was a lawyer. He grew up the son of a farmer. He understood what it meant to be a working man. But he only got one term, and he barely even got the nomination of his own party. Because you know what he didn't have?
What's that?
The sex appeal of Grover Cleveland.
You're preaching the choir, buddy.
Also, the economy was tanking, and people were super racist, and that was going on.
I believe he was the president that served between Cleveland's two non-consecutive terms. Is that right?
You were correct.
Kind of like Biden does with Trump.
Yeah, he is. Yes, there's a lot of parallels here. He's kind of Biden and Trump all in one.
Ooh, fun.
Yeah, he's kind of got a little bit of Trump, a little bit of Biden, and a lot of the country just going, we don't like what's going on. If you take the fact, the biggest parallel is that the country was super divided and going, this all sucks, and we don't like it, and we're just going to start voting in really terrible ways. And there's a lot of gerrymandering happening.
Great.
Harrison was our 23rd president, serving from 1889 to 1893, both defeating and losing to Grover Cleveland. He was a colonel, sometimes pronounced colonel incorrectly, in the Union Army during the Civil War. Those were, I think, the good guys, but I don't know. This isn't CRT.
Right. I think they both had merits, both the North and the South. They had their good guys. They had their bad guys.
We have to say that now.
It's kind of a toss-up. We legally have to say that.
Yeah,
that
if you're listening to a
South wasn't a bunch
south
of slack-jawed racist slave owners. Yeah.
Yeah. But he became known. He was a colonel. He didn't have any military experience beforehand, but he became known as a strong leader who cared for his troops' well-being. He brought them coffee late at night during cold winters. He also seemed to really mean it when he asked, how you been? Like, there was that sort of thing. Like, he just really cared. He had a catchphrase as a colonel. You want to take a guess what it was, Chip?
Was he the guy who said Bazinga?
You're close. It was, come on, boys. And I hope I'm getting that punctuation right. In 1880, after a few failed attempts, so anyway, the war happens. He does pretty well. I had a lot of more research, but I wanted this to not be a 7-hour podcast, so I'm going to skip to 1880 when he starts getting into politics. After a few failed attempts at lower office, and sort of balking at running at anything serious, he finally becomes a senator in the state of Indiana, turning down a cabinet position in the
Indiana, which is the most Indianan state.
It is. Turning down a cabinet position in the Garfield administration. I believe he was going to go to Abu Dhabi.
Oh, fun.
In 1884, he backs James Blaine to run against Grover Cleveland. Cleveland wins anyway, and Democrats take control. So now Democrats, at this point, remember, these are bad Democrats, Southern racist bad Democrats. So these are the ones that when all those the right wing Twitter guys are like, Democrats are the ones who, they were supporting slavery. These are those
Klan
Democrats.
And stuff. Right. Yes.
So immediately the Democrats take control. They gerrymander Indiana, of all places. They prevent a bunch of new states from joining the Union because they're like, oh, those guys are just going to vote Republican, so they just can't join. So Southern Democrats are just stopping any progress from taking place. Fucking Democrats, man. 1988 rolls around, and Harrison does decide to throw his hat into the ring.
1888.
So yes. No, also, no, just jumping right to 1988.
Okay. 1988. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Yep. But I did write 1988 in my notes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, we are going to talk.
Michael Jackson's Bad came out.
Yeah.
Etc. Yeah.
We're going to talk Bush Dukakis, right? Is that who it is? Mm-hmm. Yes. So 1888 rolls around. Harrison decides to run. Blaine kind of wants to run again, but realizes he's going to lose, so he backs Harrison. And Harrison, I guess they're just unhappy in general. It's just an unhappy time in the country. I wonder what that's like.
Yeah, it's got to be weird.
It seems so foreign.
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of going back and forth. But Harrison loses the popular vote by 90,000, but wins the Electoral College 233 to 168. He totally sweeps the North and the Midwest and the West, but loses the entire South. Even though he lost,
if only we could do that.
Here's the thing: is he lost the popular vote because Democrats were just completely preventing Southern Republicans from voting. So they made sure black people couldn't vote. They made sure even poor Southern whites weren't voting. Mm-hmm. If you were anything but a Southern Democrat, you just weren't voting in the South.
Yeah.
So if it was a fair vote, Harrison probably would have been able to win the popular vote. So now he's in. He's got a few ideas on what he wants to do. Big things that he wants to open up the Western Territory. He wants to bring in new states. He confirms the Monroe Doctrine, which is that we're not going to do nation building. We're basically just going to sort of defend our country. We're not going to get involved in Europe's bullshit. But that also, to do that, you need a strong navy because you just want to protect and blockade your country, which we hadn't had up till then. So up to then, the Monroe Doctrine had just been a theory. He actually starts dumping money into the Navy, and they build a bunch of ships. So he starts getting it done. He's like the first one where they're getting it done. And also at this point, they had a huge budget surplus. And he starts spending it on things like this and expansion out west. He brings on James Blaine as his Secretary of State. They start working on bringing in these new states. They bring in North and South Dakota, Montana, and Washington all in the first year.
Wow.
Idaho and Wyoming the following summer. So 6 states are brought in. The only other president who had more states brought to the Union as president was George Washington, and that guy cheated because he was first.
Right. Yeah, it's not fair.
They also annexed Hawaii and basically knocked the Germans off Samoa, so that we can take it later. So he's doing well.
Yeah, he seems like he's soaring right now.
He's incredibly progressive on civil rights. He sends Frederick Douglass as an ambassador to Haiti, which is a huge thumb in the eye to the South, to have a runaway slave as a representative of the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. He fought for trying to get actual voting rights for blacks throughout the country, because at this point it was. Now this is going to sound weird, but at this point, the government was leaving voting rights up to the local governments. The Fed. I know it sounds weird because now we have such a strong central government. That takes care of that. But at this time, it was left up to the states to decide what to do, and the states weren't doing a good job of protecting people. Can you believe it?
It's very foreign to me.
Mm-hmm. So he came out with a strong statement where he went up and he said, "What the fuck? You guys aren't actually giving them the right to vote." Mm-hmm. And everybody replied, "Man, I don't care," and then kept on going.
Jeez.
So, Lincoln's dead, and that was sort of where race relations were.
Fun times.
Yeah.
Fun times.
But we've gotten so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling good. All right. How about some more good stuff that he did?
Yes, good stuff.
He established what would become our first national forests, and he was the first president to protect a single wildlife animal by protecting seals from hunting when he noticed that everybody hunting just that one animal was really fucking up the food chain.
Good for him.
Yeah. He also helped get antitrust laws through Congress, so that was actually a bipartisan thing, help prevent monopolies. However, once the law was in place, apparently they really just never used it. So they got this great thing passed, never did anything about it, setting the precedent for the Biden administration. Harrison got congressional approval for 10 modern warships. As I mentioned, construction of those began while he was... Construction on 7 of those began while he was still in office. So for the first time, the U.S. would have a decent chance to fight off those dirty fucking Finns. Oh. So that was good. He appointed 4 Supreme Court justices, and none of them were because Mitch McConnell stole any seats.
Wow, 4 of them, though.
4. Yeah. So why did this man barely get the nomination of his own party?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's doing everything right, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, this is like, can you imagine if Biden had come in and just crushed it like this?
Yeah.
So he came in with a huge, the big thing is he came in with a huge surplus and it just got whittled away. He had tariff wars. He put on a huge tariffs of just all incoming goods. Everything except for sugar, which we talked about. I think it'll be last week's episode, depending on how we release them. Probably last episode. There was inflation because while he attempted to solve the issue of whether or not we should be pegged to the gold standard, have free silver, there was all this stuff with, like, should we? There was an issue with like what we should do with silver and gold, and should we peg to the gold standard? Should we do silver? Like, should you be able to have free coinage of your silver? What should we? How should we handle that? And he kind of just tried to play the middle and ended up doing nothing. And it ended up with inflation. It ended up with nobody being happy, and everybody just kind of ticked off at him. Race relations were, like I said, were continued to be in the shitter, and everybody was just kind of miserable and like, well, this isn't good. We're not in a good situation. The tariffs were a problem, but if he hadn't put the tariffs in, we just would have had a different set of problems.
Sure.
Like they were absolute isolationism, but if we didn't have them, we were for the first time having a really interconnected like economies around the globe, and people just weren't prepared for that. And just the country was super divided. It was just insane how divided the country was. So if you look at how people were voting, I mean, you look now and you just see those big chunks of, it's all blue in the, in the Northeast and on the West Coast, and then it's red down south. It's even more so if you look at it, it's just switched where it was blue straight down, like from Pennsylvania all the way down south, and it's just only blue, and then it's red north of that and west, and that's just how it was. Like New York was sometimes in play, and basically if you won New York, you were president, and that's how elections were won or lost. So people were upset, and in general, people just weren't happy. We lost our surplus. The economy wasn't humming along anymore. His own party was kind of ticked off. So James Blaine is considering dropping out, or is considering primarying him. Drops out as Secretary of State. He's basically on his deathbed and still considers primarying him. But Blaine and Harrison hate each other. Harrison doesn't even want to be president anymore, but stays on just to prevent Blaine from being... Blaine's almost dead.
That's a thing. Like, everybody should have it, like, in their job. There should be, like, a vice, like, person under them. Like, a vice, if I'm a comedian, like a vice comedian. Like, it's one guy that I just don't want to get so I just keep my job. Like, I think people,
I thought that was me.
Yeah.
The party considers trying to get a young Ohio governor by the name of William McKinley to run, but he says no. Smart move. He ends up becoming president after Cleveland. There's this populist party that's gaining traction out west, and it's all these new states where they're basically like libertarians. They're the early libertarian party, where you start looking into their ideas and they're like, oh, that makes sense until you think about it for more than 3 minutes, and then you're like, oh yeah, no, that's actually, hang on, the world's more complicated.
It's terrible.
And then there's the campaign's just not going well. And then here's the real kick in the nuts. The October surprise is that Harrison's wife dies 2 weeks before Election Day.
Oh, wow.
So things just aren't going well. And then his wife dies. Everybody stops campaigning. They're like, well, this is already feeling like a funeral. Let's just have one. So we'll just go to the ballot box, and I guess we can just leave these votes for Cleveland at your, in the whatever the gift box. I don't know what you do. Do you have a little birdcage thing at a funeral?
Yes, at funerals you do it. Just like a wedding, you slip it. It's most of the funerals I've been to in my family, the casket is made out of a birdcage. Oh, yeah. So like even if it's closed casket, it's open, and then you slip a little card through, like an Applebee's gift card or whatever.
Yeah. You help them get through to the other side for like half price apps.
Yeah.
Harrison's own VP also decided not to run again. He had to get a new VP. They were just like, yeah, this isn't working, bud. So it's just really they're not in a good situation. Cleveland wins, as we talked about in the beginning. Grover Cleveland wins, and he's still a pretty popular Democrat. He was looking for vengeance. He came back. The Populist Party takes a few of those western states, including North Dakota, which Harrison had just let become a state.
Wow, they didn't even like him.
Yeah, they're like, fuck off, man. Thanks for letting us become a state. We don't like you. Harrison loses the popular vote for the second time, but this time he also loses the Electoral College, 277 to 145 to 22. There were 22 electoral votes for the Populist Party. He went on. He continued to be. He worked a little bit as a lawyer, and I think he had some jobs in his church. And then he ended up dying of pneumonia, as everybody did at the time. And his final words were, "Come on, boys." He died in 1901. And I guess the one big thing you can say is that he made it as longer as a president than his grandfather did, who made it a month.
A month, yeah.
Yeah, died of pneumonia.
I will say, I think he gets a bad rap, and he did a lot of good things. But I think his biggest contribution was looking like Kevin's old neighbor in Home Alone.
He looks like, just a creepy old piece of shit. Who actually
turned out to be a nice guy.
Yeah.
He didn't murder his wife and turn her into salt.
Right.
He was just salting the side. Benjamin Harrison was just salting the sidewalks, and yes, he was estranged from his son, but he loved his granddaughter, and he vanquished the wet bandits. Benjamin Harris vanquished the wet bandits.
And like progressive for the 19th century.
Yeah, for a rich suburb of Chicago.
Yeah. That's definitely who Benjamin Harrison
We're still talking about Mark Wahlberg playing the grandfather in Home Alone, right? That's who Benjamin Harrison was.
Definitely. So I don't know. Here's the thing: is Benjamin Harrison. I'm sure really was. I mean, it sounds like he was probably a really difficult man, probably really bad at the politics of all of this.
Yeah.
I think being president, you really have to go in there and shake a lot of hands and get everybody to be like, hey, no, we're going to make this work. I think he came in there and was like, he had some good ideas and probably some bad ones too. But for the times, I think he was fairly progressive.
Yeah.
And he tried to do a lot of good for the country. And I think the country was real shitty at the time. And everybody was miserable and took out a lot of their shit on Benjamin Harrison. That's what I got from my very quick shotgun research, which, by the way, a lot of Wikipedia, but also the Washington Post did this podcast series on all the presidents. So that's why I also listened to their episode on Benjamin Harrison. So I highly recommend that. So if you want to go through and listen to their series, please go through and listen to that. But that would be where, so that's Benjamin Harrison and he was president, and he's probably should have a better reputation than he does.
Yeah, poor guy.
But he's dead now.
But well,
agreed to disagree.
Yeah, let's get him in the birdcage and send him on his way. Come on, boys. James, great job on Benjamin Harrison. Just a likable guy who's Republican at the time. I know, they get a bad rap around, out of your and my mouths recently.
Sure.
I have a similar story about a guy who was Republican. Just a nice guy. He was seemed like just a decent fella.
Yeah.
You may have never actually heard of this guy, but he was president. He was actually president and vice president, and he was never elected to either position.
Okay.
Do you ever fall just ass backwards into a job or an opportunity? Just right place at the right time. You're just a good guy, James. You're just being a good guy, and you just kind of fall into it.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. That's
Imagine falling into the vice president and the jobs right there. And so today, I want to tell you the story of a man named Leslie Lynch King Jr., who was president, and he doesn't get a lot of credit, I don't think, but president and vice president of these United States without ever being elected. Leslie Lynch King Jr.
Leslie Lynch King Jr.
Yes.
Now I know his father.
Right, Leslie Lynch King
Senior. Yeah, but Jr.
And that guy was a son of a bitch.
Yeah, but boy, could he skeet shoot.
He really could.
Yeah.
James is this really nice guy, Leslie Lynch King Jr., who was born on July 14th in and I meant to put I think it was 2000. I mean 19.
Oh boy,
hold on.
he is young.
Yeah. He's very young. He was a kid president too.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest Doogie Horner is here.
I believe it was 1913. Yes, July 14th, 1913. Leslie Lynch King was born in Omaha, Nebraska. His father, that you mentioned earlier, abusive, drunk asshole. One time he threatened the wife and this child when the child was only a few days old with a butcher knife.
Okay.
And in a progressive way, in 1913, the mother was like, I'm not just going to stick with him. You're out of here, buddy. And she moved back, I believe, with her parents, and they got rid of Leslie Lynch King Sr.
Wow, real failure to launch, that woman.
Right. When Leslie was only 3 years old, his mother married another man named Gerald Rudolph Ford. And his mom told everybody that the 3-year-old boy's name was Gerald Ford Jr. Because Leslie Lynch King was a dick, and she's like, I don't want anything. So he's just going to be this guy's son now, and so he's now Gerald Ford Jr.
Gerald Ford just got to hit a reset button on his life starting as a toddler?
I mean, he was only 2.5, but yes. And he actually formally changed his name when he was probably 18 or 20 or something like that. But he always went by Gerald Ford from the time he was 2.5 or so.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
By the way, I just want to say,
yeah,
sometimes I need a good cry, and one of my favorite videos to go to is kids finding out their foster parents are adopting them. Or you can even do, it'll be 18-year-olds finding out, officially changing their name to their stepdad or stepmom, and it'll they'll be changing their last name, and they'll show them the paperwork, and you'll just see an 18, 20-year-old and their 50-year-old step parent just bawling.
Yeah,
and you get to have a good cry with them. So you can look those up, and they're really good.
I watch the Faces of Death videos if I want a good cry. So, James, we're talking, of course, about Gerald Ford.
We are.
Gerald Ford was growing up, just kind of good guy. He was in the Boy Scouts. Apparently, he is the only Eagle Scout to ever become president, which I think that's kind of crazy to me. You would think there would be a few Eagle Scouts in there.
Yeah.
Apparently not. Yeah. He was
the
only one. So he was an Eagle Scout, became president. Gerald Ford played football at the University of Michigan in the early 1930s. I thought this was very interesting. This is the early 1930s. His best friend and the guy who was his roommate during road games was an African-American player named Willis Ward. One time, Michigan was supposed to play Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech said they would refuse to take the field if Ward played, because they're not going to play with an African-American. And I'm sure they didn't use that term.
Right.
Michigan actually relented and kept Ward out of the game. They're like, all right, you racist assholes, we'll keep him out of the game. People in Michigan protested, and Ford even threatened to quit the team. He's like, I'm done. I'm quitting the team out of protest. But he actually ended up playing the game against Georgia Tech because Ward personally asked him to play. So he's like, God, I need you. He's like, I want you to go play. So this guy's a fairly, progressive guy for the times.
Mm-hmm.
Good football player too. Ford got offers from the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers to play pro, but instead he turned them down and became the boxing coach and the assistant football coach at Yale, where he also applied to law school.
Okay.
So he could have been a pro football player, but he's like, nah, I'm going to be the boxing coach and assistant football coach at Yale, and I'm also going to go to Yale Law. Oh, and by the way, he was also a model at the time.
Imagine if he had just applied himself where he could have ended up.
Right. If he really, really tried. He became a lawyer after going to Yale. After Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the Navy and was on an aircraft carrier out in the Pacific. And during the war, he became an internationalist. An internationalist is like a less anti-Semitic way to say globalist, basically. It's the crazy, crazy, absurd idea where countries should get together and collaborate and make treaties and help each other out.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Just a crazy, wild idea that countries should maybe help each other out and work to benefit each other.
Well,
Kind of a, buy the world of Coke kind of,
as a quarter
mumbo
Jew,
jumbo.
as a quarter Jew, I feel like I can say it. That's a quarter me messed up,
It
Very,
really is.
Very a quarter. That's a very a quarter me of you to say.
Yes, it is.
Oof.
So he sees the world as he wants to be an internationalist. After the war, he came home. He ran for Congress in Michigan, and he ran basically. He was kind of his internationalism. He kind of touted that, and he beat out an isolationist candidate. So he joins the House of Representatives, and he was in the House of Representatives, James, for 25 years, from 1949 until 1973. Mad Men era. So 25 years. He was a rep. He was a moderate in domestic affairs, an internationalist in foreign affairs, and a conservative in fiscal policy. So, as they say in politics, a Barack in the streets, a Bush in the sheets.
Yeah, that's so Michelle sitting right in the middle.
Right. He voted for, back then people could do this. He voted for civil rights acts in 1957, 1960, 64, and 68, and for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So, pretty progressive guy for the times. He spent 8 years as House Minority Leader.
I do love that progressive is like, they're people.
Yeah. Oh, they're actually human beings.
And now we're going back.
Go way back from the 60s. He was House Minority Leader from 65 to 73 because Democrats had control of the House, so he couldn't be, the Speaker of the House. Mm-hmm. He was pretty much universally well liked. He's like bizarro Ted Cruz. Like everybody actually likes him. He never wrote a single piece of legislation in his 25 years, but he was apparently a great negotiator. He was kind of like the deal maker. And like, he was kind of like a Benjamin Harrison, a come on boys kind of situation. Like, hey, fellas, let's work this out.
What punctuation did you use there?
I don't care to go in that. If you listen to our episode about Q, it will tell you.
Okay. All right.
So he.
By the way, our episode on Q is just this episode backwards.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So everybody liked him. He was just a good guy. But again, didn't write any legislation, but was just instrumental in negotiating and making deals and that type of thing. So good guy. His main career goal. What did Gerald Ford want to do? He wanted to be Speaker of the House. That's all he wanted. But to be Speaker of the House, you have to have the majority. For 8 years, the Republicans didn't have the majority, so he definitely went out and campaigned for a lot of other Republican candidates. He went on. This is my favorite. He went on the rubber chicken circuit, which is my favorite name for anything, which sounds like something we would go on as comedians.
Yeah,
Rubber chicken circuit, but basically it's just rubbery chicken that you would get at some sort of conference center for $100 plate fundraiser for somebody. But he would go around and do that. He did butt heads with Lyndon Johnson, though, who was president, of course, in the mid to late 60s. Ford was critical of the war in Vietnam. He didn't like it. He didn't like what Johnson was doing with the war in Vietnam, and he would go after Johnson as minority leader. Sometimes someone asked Lyndon Johnson about it at one point, some reporter, and apparently he said, quote, "Jerry Ford is so dumb he couldn't fart and chew gum at the same time." Which apparently got watered down to he couldn't he couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time. That famous saying. But that was that. And some people say like Ford kind of has a reputation of being an idiot, and a lot of people sort of attribute it back to what Johnson would say about him. I don't know exactly how smart the guy was. The guy went to Yale Law, so I mean, it can't be a total dope. But
Yeah, but I mean, it depends on how he got into Yale Law.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But if you got in on merit, then yeah.
Yeah. So now, James, here's where it gets interesting. Your boy Richard Nixon gets elected president in 1968.
There he is.
Nixon's VP was Spiro Agnew, who had been the governor of Maryland. Okay?
They call him Moral Spiro.
Moral Spiro. For a few years, the Nixon administration was doing great, and there were no issues, and everything was just fine, so don't worry about it. Everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
Of course,
Listen
they
to
get reelected.
1972 episode.
Yes, check that out. But on October 10th, 1973, Agnew resigned. I always knew the name Spiro Agnew, but I never really looked into it. His resignation actually had nothing to do with Watergate, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, you're the first to tell me about that. I had always assumed.
Yeah, me too. He pleaded no contest to criminal charges of tax evasion and money laundering stemming from when he apparently took almost $30,000 in bribes while being the governor of Maryland.
Wow.
Which I would assume that's just part of the job of being the governor of Maryland is just to take bribes.
Yeah. That's
so. I assumed that Agnew went down with like all the Watergate guys, but he didn't at all. And he actually left before the whole Watergate thing happened, or I mean, after it happened, but like before the House of Cards fell.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine like getting out before that and just being like, "Whew, I got out just for tax evasion."
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. He got to chill out in the sun for a little while.
Yeah.
So,
you're leaving the Death Star. And you're being let out in handcuffs, like, oh, I gotta go serve on this prison colony or whatever.
Yeah,
and like for tax evasion, or and you're like, oh no, I gotta serve 6 months for tax evasion. I can't be on the Death Star anymore as it gets blown up.
And I can't remember. I don't think he served time. I could be wrong, but I forget if I did. But anyway, the VPC.
Well, let's check. We have him on right now.
Yeah, Spiro Agnew.
Spiro Agnew, everybody. Spiro, you there? Oh, nope, he's dead.
Oh, he's dead. He's so dead.
He's so dead.
He can't speak through the birdcage.
Yeah.
He doesn't get reception through the birdcage.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
So Nixon needs a new VP.
Mm-hmm.
He asks congressional leaders, and almost unanimously, everybody's like, Ford. It's just, everybody likes him. He's great. He'll be nice. Everybody thinks he's cool. It'll sort of like take away from this scandal of Spiro Agnew. So Ford accepts the job. And I thought this was very sweet. Ford accepted the job. He's not expecting it. All he wanted to be was Speaker of the House. He told his wife that, quote, being vice president would be a nice conclusion to my career.
Oh.
He was just happy with it. He's like, I'll be VP and then go off into the sunset. It'll be easy. It'll be great. What a nice little thing. So Ford was nominated on October 12th of 1973. This is the first time the VP vacancy provision of the 25th Amendment was implemented. This is the first time it was actually used. The Senate voted, imagine this today, the Senate voted 92-3 to confirm Ford on November 27th, and on December 6th, the House confirmed him 387-35.
Wow. The no votes were all just Spiro Agnew running around hitting no, like
hitting
on other people who weren't there. They were just like
taking money out of there.
Fuck you. My seat.
Yeah. Now he becomes VP in, I believe, December of 73, which is kind of like if somebody shakes you awake, okay, and like you're in your bunk and somebody shakes you and was like, hey, do you want to be the first mate of the Titanic? By the way, it's the early morning of April 15th, 1912. And you're just like, you're a good guy. You're just a passenger on the ship. You're like, sure, I guess so. Did I just hear a bump? And they're like, don't worry about it. You're the first mate now.
And you're Gerald Ford. You're like, it's April 15th, but I did my taxes in February.
Yeah, we're good. So because the Watergate scandal is just starting to unfold. So he's coming in just as people are starting to figure this out. So it's a sinking ship. About 8 months after he becomes VP, on August 4th of 1974, So he's only been in office 6 months now. Ford gets a call from Nixon's chief of staff and not at all creepy fascist asshole Alexander Haig. And Alexander Haig tells Ford, hey, buddy, get ready to be president. Shit's about to go down. Because a new tape was about to be dropped. New album was coming out. And it was going to be the nail in the birdcage for Nixon. Because America still had a moral compass in the 20th century. And this could actually bring a president down. So Haig knew, he was like, it's over. You're going to become president soon. A week later, Nixon resigns. Ford gets sworn in. He nominates Nelson Rockefeller as his VP. Now, let's review real quickly. He wasn't elected vice president. Spiro Agnew was. But then Agnew resigned, and Nixon nominates him, brings him in. Then Nixon resigns, and he just becomes president just by being a good guy in the right place at the right time.
This is like if Sesame Street did House of Cards.
It really is. It's all about cooperation. Today's word is internationalism.
House of Farts and Chews Gum.
So in August, he becomes president. He's like, oh my God, I'm president. Now, on September 8th, 1974.
Just imagining him like coming in to the White House, but it's like the Mr. Rogers type of angle, and he's
feeding the fish.
Yeah. he's like, well, it's a big day, kids.
So about a month after he is sworn in as president, he does probably the most damaging thing to his entire career. Do you know what that is?
Yes. He restarts the Vietnam War.
He's like, guys, let's do it again. So we're going back.
Okay. No, I do not know.
He does something just worse, which actually still has implications today, which is he pardoned Richard Nixon.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He's like, we let's move on as a country. I'm going to pardon him. You wonder, and like, I don't know how well this is documented or if it was, or like if Nick, as part of Nixon's deal to like leave, was like, look, you're going to pardon me or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So he pardons Nixon. A lot of people think that's what cost him re-election in 76. They're like, he's a good guy. People like him. He can probably beat Carter in 76, but they were just like, that cost him.
Yeah.
Because people were angry and they're like, you know, he Nixon should be held accountable, and then he doesn't do that.
Yeah. I wonder what it's like to think that maybe a former president who committed crimes might not face justice. I just can't imagine.
Can you even fathom, James?
Yeah.
So he's president now. I didn't even research a whole lot about his presidency. He was president for about 2 years, and I think he was fairly likable. People liked him. I don't think he did anything too crazy. He did employ some shitty people. He did employ H.W. Bush, which, say what you will about him, Donald Rumsfeld, and your boy Dick Cheney.
Okay, so, I mean, 2 out of 3 of those people are great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of them maybe not so much, but yeah. Rumsfeld, Cheney, and Bush all worked for Gerald Ford. But, James, that's the story of how just being a pretty good guy in the right place in the right time can get you to be vice president and president of the United States without ever being elected to either position.
That's incredible. You just bumping into wall. Just I'm what now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I have the worst imposter syndrome, and every day I go to work. I work with special needs adults, and I talk with our friend Mike Rainey.
Which, by the way, as president, that's fairly similar.
Yeah. I've talked with Mike Rainey before, and who does similar work at times, and there's there's many days where I'm just like wondering if this is a Shutter Island sort of setup, and because I'll just say, like, how does anybody trust me with another human being's life?
Sure.
Even I was just home with my nieces and nephews, and like my brother and sister-in-law were trusting me with their kids, and they were just like, you want to just take them to the park? And I was like, yeah, but who's watching me?
Right. Where's the chain of command?
Yeah. And they're like, yeah, no, so we can take a nap. That would be great. I cannot imagine accidentally becoming I can't imagine purposely becoming president, but accidentally becoming president, that's insane.
Yeah. But Gerald Ford did it, buddy.
Ooh, oh boy. That's and then I feel like at that the only thing that would make me feel better is losing to Jimmy Carter like a peanut farmer and being like, yeah, this equals that's right.
Feels right. This feels right. And just to put a punctuation mark on the end of that little spiel about Gerald Ford, I just got a CNN update about the January 6th hearing updates. Witnesses describe a, quote, unhinged White House meeting and Trump's, quote, call to arms to extremist followers. So I'm sure he'll definitely see some consequences.
By the time this comes out, nothing will be nothing. We'll just be like, oh my gosh, did you see the new pizza it's all stuffed crust?
Well, James, speaking of stuffed crust, where can people find you?
They can find me at James Heskey or at ADTPod on Twitter and Instagram. And where can they find you?
Just at Chip Chantry on Twitter and Instagram. And definitely follow at ADTPod. James, I think you acted very presidentially today, and I appreciate that.
Oh, and by that you mean I drunkenly walked around the White House and started a couple wars, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have money hidden in countries all over the world. So a few different air bases. We're in contact with some aliens. And I'm also trying to start a program to get to the center of the earth.
Yeah. So next week's episode, ladies and gentlemen, will be recorded live from the center of the earth as long as we get Wi-Fi. So thanks for listening, everybody. Make sure you rate and review us and follow us at ADTPod on the socials. And just as importantly, if not more importantly, follow us on wherever you get your podcasts and tell other people about us if you enjoy it, if you like learning something.
Yeah, and if you don't like learning something, start to like it. You should start liking learning.
Start liking it.
Start liking
it.
Start liking
Start like learning. Start liking learning. Start liking learning.
Start liking learning. Okay, thank you everybody. Start liking learning.